Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you around the world. Welcome to the Defiant and Cent Galaxy weekly DeFi update, where we give you everything you need to know around the decentralized finance markets, TradeFi, NFTs, and everything in between the crypto and traditional markets. This is brought to you by the Defiant, the essential information platform for the open economy, complete with news, education, market data, and more for everything around the DeFi market. And Cent Galaxy, your one-stop shop for the crypto market, an upcoming DeFi platform where you own your keys and your crypto, as well as access to data, trading, storage, and more for multiple blockchains. To get started today, we're going to start with a little bit of news, as this is going to influence how we look at price action moving forward this week. So last week we discussed the fact that there was an FTX hack, that now there's some discussions around whether or not the Bahamas was involved in seizing these assets or whether or not it was an actual hack. We're still actually assessing that information. Unfortunately, not too much has been shared, but the hacker, quote unquote, has been moving and selling Ethereum. So last time we spoke, the hacker address was about $340 million worth of value. Now it sits at about 26 million, meaning they've moved about little over $300 million worth of ETH. They sold, I believe, about $70 million worth of ETH, $70 to $80 million worth of ETH yesterday. That ended up going into some very weird DeFi pools. I believe they went through Ren to Ren BTC. And so there's some very confusing outlook around how they're exactly offloading this capital into very thin pools and obscure kind of protocols. But this morning they moved thousands and thousands, so 15, 15, 15, 15, 15, etc. So you can just see that they're moving tens of thousands worth of ETH, and that actually happened about very early this morning, about 8:20 Pacific time. So about 11:20, 11:30 Eastern time is when all of this went down. Now, yesterday, when the ETH was started to be sold, the ETH price plummeted and dropped a lot of altcoins with it. Now we have basically all of the ETH, the rest of it, another $250 million worth moving this morning, which is likely going to impact price action. So digging straight into the crypto charts, we can see that Bitcoin, we're actually looking at the hourly here. Let me get rid of some of these technicals so that we can actually make a little bit better sense of the price action. But we can see that Bitcoin is down near 16K. That is pretty close to that low that we saw back in November 9th, which was about 15.6K, much lower than the low back in June. So now we have our range. So our range is really 17.6 down to 15.6. Now, with the FTX hacker quote unquote hacker moving ETH around, that definitely is scaring people to the downside. And obviously, yesterday we saw the ETH move, mid-afternoon, and that's exactly timed with that big drop. Now we are, towards the low, but we have not touched the low of the range, but we are getting to be oversold. So if you think that 16K is going to hold, then you would probably bet that we would rise back up to about 16.6K, which coincides with this big liquidity level right here. That also coincides with the moving average. This is the 50-day moving average for the hourly. So if we end up moving here, I would expect us to end up getting cut back down right there. Now, I think another way to look at this is also the trend of the downward trend. So if it does move back up to 16.4, 16.5, maybe 16.6, it would be meeting also this downward trend, which coincides with this liquidity level, which coincides with the 50-day moving average for the 4-hour chart. So if you are bullish here, I would very much think about closing it or entering a short around 16.5 with a target of actually attacking that low to where we would either rise higher or end up moving lower. So that is, how I'm looking at Bitcoin right now. Considering that those coins are on the move, considering they did use Bitcoin or really weird Bitcoin pools to move some of that ETH, we have to continue to watch Ethereum and Bitcoin for potential weakness. Now, we also have Digital Currency Group and Genesis facing potential insolvency. That is another overhang, along with another, potential $250 million worth of ETH introduced into the market, especially Black Hat ETH, which is going to make it difficult to touch, to trade, to interact with. It's going to scare, that introduction of supply is a scary introduction and a risk-off introduction, more so than usual, because people will be worried about, am I going to touch that ETH? Is the exchange that they're using or the pools that they're using good, bad? Will they be seized, et cetera? A lot of overhang. So, in relation to Bitcoin, I would say on the high side for a move over the next few days, potentially 16.4, 16.5. If all of the contagion clears or something very fantastic happens in the traditional market, maybe we make it all the way up to 17.6. But based on what we're seeing right now, I would not really bet on that, because, of course, we'd have to firmly break above this downward trend, flip the 50-day moving average into support, and then move higher. So basically what you'd have to do is this, come back down here, and then move all the way up. Plausible, but not entirely with the overhang that we've been seeing. So it is very likely to see 16.5 and then back maybe 15.6 to where we'd either bounce or then break back below 15.6. Looking at Ethereum, a bit similar formation to Bitcoin, but I think the biggest thing here, and actually we broke, let me zoom down here because I knew I had another support line. So basically where we're hovering is what I've drawn is a set of ranges. Now, 1,000 coincides with the low back in July. It's also that very nice round number that crypto loves to tag. This was previous support until obviously yesterday. We had this deviation down here. We were holding 1150 quite solid, and then we broke down to about 1100. Again, crypto loves those round numbers. So if we draw a support line directly at 1077, we'll get one more line of a potential range, very similar to Bitcoin. Kind of looks like it wants to tackle this, our target, I should say, the lower end, and potentially rise higher, but it is obviously in a holding pattern, so it could definitely make it back up to 1150 before heading higher or before heading lower, or it could potentially make it up to 1200 before heading back lower again. I think for ETH, this is very tricky because you've got all of that ETH on the move from the sketchy wallet. And you've also got ETH, trying to form potential bottoming pattern with oversold RSI on a larger time frame chart. But if we also use very similarly to Bitcoin, this downward trajectory, it is not looking very positive. So if we were to rise, basically the trend math says that we would pretty much get stuffed at 1150, considering that's coinciding with both resistance as well as our, just level resistance as well as trend resistance. So if we make it back up to 1150, then we get cut back down, and then we're maybe at 1080, potentially heading back towards 1000, 1010. So ETH not looking very positive there, but if great news comes, we do get a catch. We have to break above 1150, flip that to support, break above 1200, flip that to support, and then you can move higher. So that's really what you have to do. And of course, you still have a downward trend here as well. That'll likely coincide with this, with the 50-day moving, or with the 100-day moving average right here. So, something to consider. Definitely always be aware of potential upside. And this is definitely where you would potentially tend to see a bounce. So, the short targets to be 1150 or, probably 1215, something like that. And that would be a good place to short. Or you wait till it hits support down here, and then potentially long up and long high. There's no clear read. Typically this is where you would get long. You typically want some long support and short resistance. And I'm not telling anyone to short resistance. I'm just saying there is a multitude of catalysts that tend to push us down and have pushed us down historically. But of course, the market prices that in eventually. So, did we price in a $200 million sell for Ethereum over the past, 24 to 36 hours? That's plausible. But until that ETH is introduced into the system, we won't entirely know. And I think that that's probably a better idea to look at it risk off until we understand what's going to happen with this sketchy ETH, with Digital Currency Group and Genesis, and figuring out whether or not they're solvent. So moving forward into DXY, which pushes around equities and crypto, general risk asset classes. We drew these lines last week. We touched the 105 level to perfection, and we are now, in what most traders would look at as a range for DXY. The high is 108, the low is 105. I would expect us to ping pong around here. It would be more likely than not to do something like this and then either break higher or break lower. You need to break 108 and flip that into support to move higher. You need to break 105 and flip that into resistance to move lower. So there's your outlook for DXY. If this materially moves higher, risk, including crypto and equities, will move lower. If this materially moves lower, risk and equities will end up moving higher. Right now, it does look strong. It just hit supports last time it did this, and it ended up, zooming a lot higher. So something to look out for if you are a bull or feeling risk on. Looking at equities, not the prettiest picture. Got all of our support and resistance lines lined out. If DXY continues higher, this is likely continuing lower. Oh, that's not the that is not the thing I wanted. If DXY moves higher, this moves lower, back down to probably the first support. Maybe it ping pongs back here, and then it's moving lower. Alternatively, you could catch here and end up moving higher. But, that's really going to depend on DXY. And also think about general context for market news. We have no real major, U.S. economic news. The U.S. has Thanksgiving on Thursday, so markets will be closed on Thursday. And then markets will close early on Friday for the day after Thanksgiving, which is also Black Friday in America, big shopping day. So nothing really market impacting this week. And so there's basically an absence of data. The data last week was obviously positive. Inflation looks better. But of course, with a strong dollar and a lack of market moving information to give anybody confidence or potentially lack thereof, the equities are likely to either fall into a holding pattern, which would be moving around here like DXY, especially if DXY just continues to do the same thing. But if DXY pops higher or pops lower, that'll have an inverse effect on equities, which will then force things lower or force things higher. And right now, the dollar looks stronger, considering all the recessionary talk. We're probably going to have a bit of a weaker holiday spending season. And of course, equities are quite extended from where they were previously. Now, they've definitely come off the high a little bit, but typically when we see this type of formation, it ends up being a reset. If we follow the same pattern of what happened last time, we ended up doing this. And now it looks like very similar is going to come. So now if it follows the same exact trajectory, it would likely probably make it back down to 3760, 3770 would be a target. In my opinion, it is better to be short equities than long equities currently, but the DXY will likely continue to push that around. Now, the DPI, this is basically the DeFi Pulse Index. It is a conglomerate of top DeFi assets built into an index to track the broader market. And we are going to use this to assess the DeFi markets in comparison to traditional markets. So just looking at it, just a little bit of a support and resistance lesson, draw supports at the low, the recent low, and then obviously we'll draw supports at the high, and we will ignore that wick for now because it does look like deviation on a longer time frame scale. And this looks to be the DeFi Pulse Index formation. Now, could we, basically what you'd want to do is long supports and you want to short resistance. If you long support, potential double bottom. If you short, if it makes it back up here, potential double top, nice little range. But there's no real clear read on this right now. We basically have, 55 as support. It is nearing support. We would like this to bounce. We obviously have resistance first at the 83 level, and then if it can flip and break that, then we can end up moving higher. But given the scariness around ETH, around those wallets, this, I would expect this to be in a holding pattern or meet support in the near future based on how things are looking. Of course, we do have some bullish divergence forming, but of course that has to confirm on today's candle. So that'll take another 8 hours to close before we will know whether or not this is actual bullish divergence. So typically, like I said, you want a long support, you want a short resistance. We will have to see how it reacts to the 53 to 55 level. If it does end up moving higher, then it would be about 85. So if we track the DPI in comparison to Bitcoin, we can see it is very similar. Very, very, very similar. If you look at and actually let's do this, make it a lot easier. Blue is DPI, orange is Bitcoin. Very, very, very similar moves in formation. So if Bitcoin ends up moving lower, we can probably expect the DPI to end up moving lower and vice versa. I would assume that Bitcoin is moving this around given its dominance in the market. Causation doesn't mean correlation, but that's my assumption here. So if Bitcoin ends up moving lower, so should DPI. If Bitcoin ends up moving higher, so should DPI. So moving forward, talking about DeFi focus, looking at total value locked, we can see we have unfortunately moved lower since we spoke last week. We're at 41.8 billion. Keep in mind that our support target is about 40.4 billion, so about 40 billion. We can lose another 1.4 billion until we hit that support level. So that's something that we'll be keeping a close eye on. Nothing noticeably is up other than Pancake Swap. So let's go ahead and check out BSC. BSC has seen a 10% change in total value locked, which is pretty large in comparison to everything else, considering most things are down. So Pancake Swap, big boost, definitely picking up the majority of the BSC DeFi category. But to see things at 5.29 billion and staying up, that means that BSC is supporting the growth of the current DeFi, BSC is supporting the growth of the current total value locked amount in the broader DeFi ecosystem. So we look at Ethereum down 3%, which is 3% of 24 billion is nearly $1 billion, and BSC is up 10% on 5 billion, which is about half of $1 billion. So there's something to consider there just in terms of looking for opportunity, looking for strength. If you are looking for opportunity, if BSC continues to grow, if that's not just a 1 day or 1 week fluke, that's definitely something to look into moving forward if you would like to accrue value. Now, ETH is definitely deflationary now, so and there's a lot of development happening on Ethereum in terms of future state products. And of course, we have the layer 2s such as Arbitrum and Optimism still cranking, but they're down. BSC is up. We'll have to see if that pattern continues. Finally, looking at NFTs, we can see some large growth for Bored Apes. If you remember when we spoke last week, these were down tremendously. So it does seem that people are potentially flocking to NFTs for maybe safety for their ETH. Not entirely sure, but Bored Ape did have a bit of a price drop, but along with that price drop included a volume increase. And that's why they're doing over 800K per day, along with CryptoPunks. And then Other Deed is obviously doing 600K. So, Utes are still in the top 10 on Solana, as are DGod. So 2 out of the top 10 volume are on Solana. And then we have Gods Unchained, which are on Mutable X. Everything else is on ETH, but no real notable change other than this broadside one. Seems to be a new mini game, maybe worth checking out. But obviously, volume is down after it made it into the top 10. So value may be sucked dry there. OpenSea is still doing the most volume. Magic Eden, down across the day. Let's actually look at it across the week. So OpenSea is down 25% on the week. Magic Eden's down 13% on the week since we last spoke. So NFTs, not entirely a flight to safety. Looks like the volume increase was due to the price dip for Bored Ape Yacht Club, along with a few other Yuga assets. Unfortunately, the ETH slide has impacted other things as well. So looking at the broader market, Bitcoin is nearing support. Definitely has a chance to move higher, but we are probably going to be stuck in this larger formation until some sort of fundamental catalyst comes. ETH is something we're going to have to watch for because of this sketchy wallet sending tens of thousands of Ethereum not 20 minutes ago, which was, for context of this recording, that is about 8:30 to 9 a.m. Pacific time, about 11:30 to 12 p.m. Eastern time. And so we'll have to continue to monitor ETH. And then, of course, the DPI index very closely correlated with Bitcoin. So wherever Bitcoin goes, we'll expect broader DeFi prices to move as well. And of course, no major market news this week with the Thanksgiving holiday in the US, which means it should be a relatively quiet week, which means the market should move, based on the data that it has. And that is not much, with still very wonky macro and worrying signs in the crypto market, which does not bode well for sentiment. Finally, looking at just what Bitcoin and Ethereum sentiment look like. Bitcoin sentiment quite bearish. Ethereum sentiment is neutral, and both hourly sentiments are neutral to bearish as well. So not looking very positive for the short to midterm outlook for Bitcoin or Ethereum, but we will have to see. So that has been the Defiant and Cent Galaxy DeFi update. We hope all of you have a fantastic week and good luck out there in the markets. We will speak to you next Monday. Have a great day.